Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see everybody. We've got another fantastic guest for us today. My name's Mary Gregory. This is Lessons in Leadership. We are up to episode 34, and I'm absolutely delighted for episode 34 to welcome Lucy McCarraher from Rethink Press. Hello, Lucy.
Hi, Mary. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to have you here, Lucy. And I say from Rethink Press, you're the founder and CEO of Rethink Press, but also...
yes, I share Rethink Press with my co-founder, Joe.
Oh, yes, we did. Yeah. Joe was here earlier as well as your co-founder. He's, I think, on my second edition of this show. So that was quite phenomenal. And but I want just to add that you're not just about Rethink Press. You also set up the Business Book Awards and also a BOO, which stands for a Book of One's Own, specifically a book support group for women to get more women writers out there. And you're also an author yourself, so you're not doing very much, are you?
No, I'm not very busy, really.
Got so many things going on there, but really great, the work that you are doing, the difference that you're making in the world. And really what I'd like to start with is just to hear a bit more about your background and what took you to setting up Rethink Press and getting involved in publishing and writing books and things in the capacity that you're doing today. So tell us a bit more about your journey.
Okay, well, I've had a kind of unstructured career, you could say. It's just gone from area to area. But I started in publishing. In fact, when I was still a student, I was publishing student newspapers and things like that. And I went to Australia and started with my then husband a national theatre magazine, which was completely mad, and no one had properly managed to do it before, because Australia is a huge country with very few people in it, and so commercially it made no sense whatsoever. So anyway, we did that and we ran it for 8 years, and that was unbelievably good experience. And then when I came back to England, I went into TV, in fact, television and video, writing and script editing, but also did some publishing work. I did some editing for Matthew, and I worked as an agent, a writer's agent too.
Yes.
And then it was all change, and I went into work-life balance as a researcher and ultimately a consultant. And that was quite a new thing at the time. But that was when I actually got to write my own first book. And I wrote a book called The Book of Balanced Living. I was actually commissioned by a publisher to write a book, and a corporate version of it called The Work-Life Manual. And that's where that happened. And then a bit later, I started writing some novels. And I had my first novel published by Macmillan, and I wrote another 2 novels, and then I was going to write a 4th one, but it turned into a self-help book. And it was published by a guy called Gregory, who had a publishing company called Bookshaker. Turned out we actually lived very near each other. And so we met, and I worked for him as his commissioning editor for a time with Bookshaker. But then I suggested we start a slightly different kind of publishing company, still addressing the people that the authors that he was working with and publishing were experts, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants.
Yes.
And I suggested working with a slightly different business model. And so we set up Rethink Press together, almost as an experiment. And in fact, 10 years later, that was in 2011, and 10 years later, we have gone from a 2-person company to a team of over 50 people around the world. And we've published over 500 books in that time.
Wow. So what started out as an experiment, a bit of an idea, a bit of a punt maybe, has turned into a really successful business, publishing 500 books, did you say?
We've published over 500 books.
Over 500.
The last 3 years, we've published about 70 books a year.
Wow.
So, it's a lot of books, really.
And supporting entrepreneurs and business leaders getting their thought leadership out there, which is just fantastic.
Exactly. And also we're very, very niche, if you like, in that we focus specifically on books that are incredibly valuable, have really, really useful content and tell great stories, but are also for the author to be able to build their business with.
Yes.
So traditional
Yes.
publisher is looking for authors who sell books. Our kind of remit is to find books that sell authors.
Right. So it's specifically as a marketing tool. So using that book as a marketing tool for yourself.
It is, yes.
Yes.
That's not to say that, our books aren't very good quality and have huge value. And, we do very well in the Business Book Awards. And of course,
yes.
the judging is completely separate. I don't have anything to do with the judging of the Business Book Awards. So objectively speaking, our books, I think, I feel validated by the fact that we do get a lot of books shortlisted, and we had a winner and two highly commended this year, which is great.
Yes. And I love that you and Joe came together and have created this between you, and you are the joint founders. And I called you CEO. I kind of think of Joe as the CEO as well. So you might not be CEOs, but you're certainly the joint leaders of the business.
Absolutely. We don't call ourselves CEO, which is all I've meant.
Yes.
And I'm not, we are both the equal founders and runners of Rethink.
Yes. And I should acknowledge, actually, you published my book. So my book's in the background there. And absolutely, for me, it was about getting my voice out there, actually, as much as anything, and sharing my experiences and insights that I gathered over the years as much as anything else. And it's been fantastic to have it out there and get it out there, even though it took me ages to write it. It felt like it was a long birth.
And I hope it has done for you what, we want all our books to do, which is help you build your business and become more visible and a greater authority and seen as the expert in your field. That's our mission.
It's certainly helped with my visibility. I cannot deny that. So it's definitely helped my visibility. But also for me, I mean, the day it went to #1, for me, it was like, oh, wow. It was like, talk about having to change past messages from your childhood. It was like, gosh, I actually got to #1. It was like phenomenal to get there. So that in itself was a real turning point moment for me. So it was great to be a best-selling author. And I couldn't have done it without Rethink Press. So thank you.
Well, it's a great book. Very, very proud to have published it. I love it.
Thank you. So, but you're not just about publishing books then. You also established the Business Book Awards. So tell me a bit more about how that came to be.
Well, when we'd been running Rethink Press for a few years, I'd always had it in my mind that it would be really nice to celebrate and reward and award, some of the great authors out there. But I didn't want to do it just for Rethink Press books. And for a time, I couldn't see a way to sort of create a bigger event or sort of thing awards happen. So I got together with the team at ThinkFest, who are specialists in awards and events, and they really like the idea of a business book awards too. They are very business orientated as well. And so in 2017 we sort of said, yep, we're going to give this a go, and we launched the Business Book Awards. And really we had no idea whether the publishing industry, the authors of Business Book Awards, would kind of come on board with this. It could have been a terrible kind of embarrassing flop.
Yes.
I mean, ThinkFest are fabulous in that they are so good at social media and getting the word out there. And so by the end of the entry period, we had got 150 books entered, which was, really fantastic. That seemed pretty substantial. And also we had entries from all the big publishers, the business book publishers, hybrid and independent publishers like us, and also self-published books. And that was one of the things we really wanted to do, was to celebrate every route to publishing, because a lot of the big awards really just feature the books published by big traditional book publishers that are in the bookshops, and and that wasn't what we wanted to do, because obviously from our experience we knew that there were lots of excellent authors and great books into quite niche markets. So we were thrilled to have all that, and so that was the first year. And this year was our 4th Business Book Awards, and we've gone up to 275 entries. So it's actually growing all the time.
That's great.
Yeah, so, but one of the things that happened the first year that really wasn't intentional at all was that, I created a judging panel, got fantastic people together, very, totally gender balanced.
Yes.
And we had what we thought was incredibly fair and even-handed entry criteria and judging criteria and all that. And when we got to the end of the judging process, we found that we had 11, in fact, 10, we had 10 categories and 9 categories and 2 extra awards, including Business Book of the Year. And we found that all of our 11 entries were brilliant. The authors were fabulous, the books were brilliant, but every single one was a white man. And that was like, oh, how did that happen?
Yes.
And there was no one obviously to blame. The judges had done what they were supposed to do. The book, but I did look back and see that we had only half as many entries from women authors as from men. So I thought, well, why is that happening?
Yes.
So I thought that the only thing I can do here is to go on a campaign and get more women to write their business books, because I really felt, I also looked at the Rethink press list, and we were publishing far more books by men than by women too. And I literally had not noticed that before.
So that's fascinating. So what I'm struck by is, even though you were consciously choosing to make it as fair as possible, there were still unconscious biases and unseen forces at work that caused it to be the result that it was. It was all men, all white men that won as well.
Yes.
So that's absolutely, that to me, that's an incredible demonstration of the power of unconscious bias, actually. That's why we need to keep working on ourselves and keep revealing our unconscious biases in order to try and get over that. But then you mentioned that you noticed that more men were being published than women by Rethink. So I'm going to ask, why do you think that was? Why do you think there were more men out there writing their own books than there were women?
Well, what I did was I decided that I would do the only thing that I really can usefully do in these circumstances, and that's write a book about it. So I did research. I interviewed and surveyed 50 women authors who had in fact published their books.
Yes.
But I asked them what the challenges they'd found were. And it came out at essentially there were 6 C's. So confidence, not confidence in themselves and their work, but confidence in putting their work out there to be seen by the public, and and the kind of self-promotion aspect of it that bothered them. So then there was credibility, and they didn't feel they had the credibility. The two other C's that are kind of combined are cash and caring. So for a lot of women, they are the carer in their, well, not necessarily even just in their family, but even in their organization. And somehow it feels selfish to take the time to write your own book. And that came up a lot, which surprised me, that it felt selfish to write a book. And also because women do more of the caring work, their businesses are smaller. So the cash and the investment in writing and publishing a book is more risky for women.
Yes.
And then there's criticism. Women are really scared of criticism more than men are. And then finally, there's the club, and there's that sort of, there's something kind of clubbable about the idea of writing a book. And men feel that, yes, they can join that club. That's fine. You know, they've got the support. They'll be comfortable becoming an author. And women feel, you know, they have less of that support that pushes them in that direction.
Yes.
So those were the reasons, it seemed, that women were writing fewer books.
Yes.
So, you know, and also just not knowing how, not knowing where to go, So I wrote a book called A Book of One's Own, which was kind of a bit of a polemic about why this was happening and why women should write their books, because quite apart from the fact that a book is a gender neutral way of becoming a leader, of showing your leadership and your authority, and far from sort of undermining your credibility, it goes out there and makes you credible. But also, apart from the individual, you know, every individual woman author who publishes a book becomes more authoritative and credible. The more books that are published by women raise the credibility of women in general.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
was really kind of, campaigning for more women to do that. And that's why I started, as you said, that the Facebook group
Yes.
for women called ABU, which is just a strange.
It's certainly memorable as a name, ABU, but it stands for A Book of One's Own.
Yes, exactly.
Which is great, but it's certainly memorable. And that book, that group is specifically for women.
Yes, it is. It's for women authors and aspiring authors, and also, sort of supportive women who read business books and want to sort of see what goes on during the process. So yes, that's what that's there for.
Yes, and because on the back of that, you've also got a sort of inner circle or a mastermind that supports women with their writing as well. So on the back of setting up ABU, how many women's books have been published?
Oh, I haven't actually counted how many. In fact, I don't know that I even necessarily know how many, because some people have, sort of been in the group and then gone and published elsewhere, which is great. I've never counted the number of Rethink Press books that have been published because people have been part of the ABU group. But I shall go away and do that. But I would think it's probably getting on for 20 maybe in the last 18 months or so.
Okay, that's good. That's 20 that wouldn't otherwise have been there, so that's really good.
I think that was the point, that women like being, or a lot of women, not all women, I don't want to generalize, but when you're working on a project that makes you feel quite vulnerable, being in an all-woman space where you've got people to talk to who are going through the same thing is more comfortable for a lot of women than being in a mixed space where the men seem to be more confident and successful perhaps, or whatever, and women want to share issues that particularly pertain to them.
Yes. Do you know what? I want to acknowledge that, because I design and deliver women's leadership programs, and sometimes in the organizations they're being delivered in, men will challenge, why are women having their own course, sort of thing. But actually it's particularly because it's not an even playing field. Organizations are set up by men, historically were set up by men, and it systemically favors men. They might, it's like what you described at the beginning. Even though you were consciously trying to put things in place not to be biased, there's still that bias around. So it's almost like women really benefit from having that space on their own where they can just be themselves and share whatever they need to share, which is the same for women's leadership development programs as well, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, it just unfortunately still is the case. I mean, we are, actually just the majority of human beings, and yet, we still feel like a minority in those sorts of, in business, and perhaps in the act of writing a book, and putting our knowledge and expertise out there. And it's, when you are in a minority, I think you need to have a place to share with other people in the same position. Where you don't feel subject to potential criticism or, just to be undermined a bit.
Yes. I also love your generosity as well when you say, well, they're part of the group. Some of them have published with Rethink, but some go off and publish with others, and that's great. That's fine. I really like that generosity, Lucy. So you're not supporting these women and they've all got to publish with Rethink. They can publish with whoever they want.
No, I really do care that, more women write and publish their books. And obviously not everybody's going to publish with, of course, I'm very happy when people do publish with Rethink Press. But, some books are different. And, if you can find a traditional publishing contract and, get a bigger audience for your book, that's wonderful. I'm very, sort of supportive of anybody who does that. And also, other people want to self-publish, perhaps for reasons of finance or because they just want to keep control of their book, whatever that is. And that's absolutely, that's fine too. And I'm really happy that this year in the Business Book Awards, we've got a whole range. We've got winners who self-published their book. We've got winners from big publishers, and we've got winners from, hybrid and independent publishers. So it's really and equal numbers of men and women winning as well as entering. So so 50%, nearly 50% of entries this year were from women, up from 30%. So
that's fantastic.
So something.
That is a real great measure of progress, isn't it?
Yeah,
really good.
yes, definitely. No,
Yeah.
that makes me very happy. And also, we really have used the Business Book Awards as a platform for diversity generally. So, we have much more. I mean, even our judging team is more diverse, and our authors are more diverse. And one of our winning books this year is called Black Women in Tech. I mean, that's just, I'm so pleased to have that book there and being showcased.
Such an important book by the sounds of it as well. It's amazing. And the winners this year were fascinating because there were two guys who never even imagined they'd ever write a book. That's what and they've won the Business Book of the Year. What a fantastic acknowledgement of them.
Exactly. No, so nice when that happens.
Yeah, lovely story attached to that. So going to ask you a question which I ask all my guests. We're at that time in the conversation, which, I look at what you've achieved and you're a leader in Rethink, you're a leader at the Business Book Awards, you lead a Boo. You're just generally a great leader and a great role model, Lucy, yourself. So I'm curious about a lesson that you've had yourself where it really opened your eyes up to who you are as a leader and what you contribute, and has almost shifted your perspective in a way to be the leader you are today. So I just wonder what story you've got to share with us today that relates to that.
I think one of the things that happened to me was that sort of 15 years ago or so, everybody in my family got ill. My husband got ill and couldn't work, and I had been sort of, I'd say, messing around, but I had been very happily writing novels and not really earning much money at that for the last couple of years. When
following your creative urges, yes,
exactly. And then I've got two adopted daughters, and one after the other. One of them got ME, and the other was diagnosed with another condition. And it was like there's no one. I have to step up here and take responsibility, financial and every other kind of responsibility for my family. And that resulted in a few sort of steps, I suppose, perhaps was one of the reasons behind starting Rethink Press, because I really needed to find something that I could do, having sort of stopped being a work-life balance consultant, which I was very successful at, but, I'd stopped doing it to write novels. I really needed to go out there and find something that I could, not have to rely on anybody else to do. So I think, I think often leadership roles start in families, and women are very strong leaders in families. And it is something you can take into the world of work and business and creativity and use those skills and that knowledge and that background.
So parent as leader is what I'm hearing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So, and how did you apply that in what you've actually ultimately set up here? Which is lots of different things.
Well, I suppose there's a sense in which I have always been somebody who's worked at home. I've never had a proper job. So that's a Rethink Press evolved in that sort of way as well. Joe is also someone who, likes to do his own thing, works from a home office. We both do. And setting up our team has been entirely based, we've just kind of evolved and expanded in that kind of way. So we've never we don't have a payroll. We don't have employed people. Everybody who works for us is freelance. I mean, some people work pretty much full time, but, and it's all very flexible. And that's been what's incredibly important to me, being able to work around the needs of my family.
Yes.
And allowing everybody else in the organization, in the business, to have that same freedom. And be trusted and be able to deliver whenever they want to, as long as they deliver what they need to deliver. I don't care if they do it at 2:00 in the morning, as long as they're there to answer emails from authors, at least once a day, then that's absolutely fine. I don't need to see people sitting in a chair from 9 to 5.
I think that's phenomenal. So what you're describing, so certainly you're a modern business for today's age of the gig economy, because that's all the freelancers and all, and everyone's accountable for their own business and doing the work they need to do. But you also mentioned trust, the tremendous amount of trust that there is, that we will make it happen. And I suppose what I'm curious about in what you've just shared there is you've got lots of different people, quite diverse roles that people are taking on. How do you get everyone together and aligned and moving forward and representing as Rethink Press? How do you do that?
Well, we put a lot of effort into that, into having, I mean, we've never had an office, obviously, because we all work at home. So we've always been, you know, for the last 5 years or so, as we've expanded, we've always had, I think we used to use Skype, but we've always been on Zoom. We have regular meetings where everybody gets to talk. We have get-togethers. The different teams interact. I think we just really work at that. Try and make sure that everybody is happy in their work, make sure that if they have problems, they are able to discuss it. And I think the proof of the pudding is in the fact that people, you know, have started with us and stayed with us. And, you know, the only thing that makes people leave is when their jobs get too big. If they've taken them on as a freelance and they wanted to work a couple of days a week and suddenly the job has become, their role has got bigger, then sometimes they've had to say a couple of times recently, I can't do all this.
Yes.
Recruit someone with a bigger, you know, with more time, who wants to be more time. But again, always very flexible.
Yes.
So yeah.
I really love that. I mean, so you're really, in terms of, you know, these COVID days and being agile. Agile's been the year, hasn't it? The whole way through the COVID pandemic. So you've got to be agile as a leader in these difficult times. The way you've created your business absolutely is a fantastic role model. I keep using the word role model, I've noticed in this conversation, but it is a real role model of how to work in this gig economy, in these times of uncertainty, but also how to engage and keep people on board in a virtual working environment, which is yours, is completely.
Yes, I mean, I can't, you know, claim that we had any foresight or thought, you know, had any idea that COVID or lockdown was going to happen. But the way our business has evolved, and I think the attitude we have to our colleagues and co-workers is that they are, you know, there's just huge respect. I mean, we're always really happy to take on people who are better at doing things that we were doing, because Joe and I started out doing everything between us, and it's, you know, it's just such a pleasure to be able to find somebody who does this aspect of the job much better than we were doing it, because they're specialists and have that particular background, and then, you know, develop this. Well, I think it's a lot about systems as well. We're very, very systems based. We document everything. We make sure that you know, there are processes and systems for everything, so that everybody feels secure in what they're doing, and they're not just sort of, you know, left to deal with things in their own way. And also our team leaders, who we now have, are absolutely fantastic too. And everybody is, you know, sort of caring, and you know, just manages the people that they manage in a really excellent way that is just wonderful to see.
So Lucy, I think what I'm taking away is there's probably, you know, I keep seeing blog posts and people are starting to write books about the thing. Maybe there's a book for Rethink to write here, but there's lots that you've shared that I think bigger organizations and bigger corporates could really learn from in terms of how to work in a virtual way, because your whole business has been virtual from the start. So there must be lots of insights and wisdom that you can share for those organizations that are now having to learn to adjust to these new ways of working as well.
Yeah, well, I was selling this back in the 2000s, the 90s and the 2000s as work-life balance. That was where I came from, you know, being a consultant and going into the big corporates and saying, look, this will work better if you're flexible, if you allow people to manage themselves, if you allow them not to come into the office every single day and you know, work around their family and other needs. And it was kind of like banging your head against a brick wall for a long time. And suddenly everybody's gone, oh yes,
it does work. It does work. Yes, it's taken a pandemic, it's taken a crisis for us to start to appreciate that actually this is workable. Lucy, we are out of time. I'm going to have to call it a day, unfortunately, because it's been really lovely hearing your story and hearing all about the background of what you've established as a leader. Just really, really grateful for what you've shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you. And thank you to those of you who've been watching today. You can make comments in the comments box. Do put your name up there as we are on StreamYard at the moment. And for those watching in catch up, do write your comments. We always respond as quickly as we can to any comments. Next week, I'm away on holiday, so there's no lessons in leadership next week, but we will be back the week after. So look out for our flyers and everything when we will welcome another phenomenal leader to share their story too. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.